What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at the top 4 prediction and who's going to get that crucial 4th place finish in the English Premier League. The teams we've narrowed it down to for this video are Arsenal, Tottenham, and Manchester United. We're leaving West Ham out of it because they're 6 points behind Arsenal and having played more games than any of the other 3. So between these big 3 teams, which is going to end up in that 4th place finish? Now, before we get into the tactical setups behind each team, check out both my books. They're online on Amazon, and there's links in the description below. And we're going to start with Arsenal as our tactical team because they're in the current 4th place finish. And by being in that spot, they are their current favorites. So now we have Ramsdale in goal, Kieran Tierney on the left, Gabriel and Ben White through the central defense, and Cedric Suarez on the right because Tomiyasu has been out with injury. Then we have Xhaka Partey as a double pivot, Martinelli, Odegaard, and Saka, with then Lacazette as our lone central striker. So in the build-up phase, they usually take a bit of an asymmetric approach to then accommodate squad roles. So Gabriel and Ben White take their positions next to Ramsdale in the build-up. Tierney and Suarez start in a bit more narrow positioning, giving them closer access to their central defenders, allowing Saka and Martinelli to then create full width higher up the field. Our midfield diamond consists of Partey as a single pivot with Xhaka through the left half space, with the ability, especially in the first third of build-up, to then come deeper and also occupy a more advanced area. Lacazette typically drops deeper in line with the attacking midfielders of Odegaard through the right half space. Now as we move into the midfield third, we see our back 4 take a more narrow approach, but this can then soon change with the positioning of Xhaka coming deeper as a deep-lying playmaker in the left half space and then fanning out into the wide area, allowing Kieran Tierney to then occupy full width using his abilities to get forward and his left foot in crossing positions, allowing Martinelli to then occupy the space between the lines. Often when he occupies this role between the lines, it's a much more direct and goal-oriented approach rather than Emile Smith-Rowe. When he inverts, it's much more as an attacking playmaker. So as we circulate possession now, we see the right fullback for Arsenal typically comes deeper, creating asymmetric back 4 and extending the connections advanced to Odegaard and Saka. And by doing this, they can then test the opponent's compactness and often progress through wide areas and target Saka in 1v1 situations against the opposing team's fullback. And against a 4-3-3, when their midfield 3 and attacking positions come up against an opponent using midfield 3, we often see their extended horizontal connections, making it harder for their opposing team to shift and often overloading wide areas. So then when we move into the final third, we have a more narrow back 4, whether this is Tierney or Xhaka dropping deeper in the left side is dependent or contingent on the situation. And then this is where we can see Arsenal, whether you see it as a benefit or a weakness, is their goals come from a lot of different areas and they don't have one natural goal scorer. So like I said, this could be a potential downside to their game or a strength that they could get goals from multiple areas. Now we'll move into Manchester United and look at their tactical setup. So now Manchester United probably have the most inconsistency within their squad and player selection and starting to develop the same inconsistency with the performances they put in. But we go with De Gea as the goalkeeper, Telles, Maguire, Varane, and Dalot as our back 4, with then Fred and McTominay as our double pivot, and Sancho, Fernandes, Elanga as our attacking midfielders, and then Cristiano Ronaldo in the central striker position. Now, in the build-up phase, we have De Gea with the ball, Maguire to the left, and Varane to the right, so no changes there. Then going forward, we have McTominay and Fred staggering themselves because we know Fred can get forward, and he has done in more recent games. So typically when Fred drops deeper to then use a double pivot, we'll see a player like Sancho drop into the half space or Bruno Fernandes favor one side, allowing then dual width to be created on one side and single width on another, with close half space occupation and the threatening of dangerous areas. Ronaldo rather inactive in build-up and is much more involved in the final third. Now as we move into the midfield third, we then see more movement from our double pivot. Oftentimes we can see a player dropping in as a deep line playmaker, whether this is Fred on the left side or McTominay on the right, is situationally dependent. And here we go with Fred allowing Sancho to then invert and Telles, allowing the overlapping run, creating height and width on the left-hand side. Similar movement to Arsenal, but we see their fullbacks start in a wide area and a double pivot with the back four. So completely different setup. So the implications when the team does this are completely different from when Arsenal do it. And we have the role of Fernandes, often dropping to the weak side between the lines to then mirror a player like Sancho between the lines. Then we have Ronaldo pinning the back four or the two central defenders for the opposing team. And now we can just look at when Fernandes does drop to the weak side, creating a midfield three with McTominay at the base and inverting Sancho's run, who also has the ability to stay wide and create dual width, but by running in behind, he then pins and manipulates the opposing defense and allows for freedom in the wide area for the fullback. And now we can talk about Ronaldo's role in possession, oftentimes coming deeper, attracting a central defender, allowing Bruno Fernandes to run in behind and run off of him. And the timing between these two players in the run to get in behind is very good, and we often see them create chances this way, especially in the midfield third when there is that space in behind to exploit through their movement and their pairing. Now for Manchester United, the biggest weakness for them would be the inconsistency in the squad and their commitment tactically to the system isn't quite there, whether that's a lack of time or lack of trust in the manager. There's been a lot about them in the news and players falling out. So there's a lot of friction within the squad. And whether you see it as a benefit or a drawback, the importance of a player like Ronaldo in the team to then grab a hat-trick against a team like Spurs to keep them in the top four running, and relying on players like this to produce something to bail them out in tough situations is something Arsenal doesn't have. But as we said, it could be a strength or a weakness depending on how you look at it. If you look at a match where Ronaldo doesn't do that, they carry him throughout the match and don't supply him with the chances. Or in matches where they do, he gets the chances, gets the goals. It just depends on how the team's playing, what they supply him with, and what you're looking to build around. Now we're going to look at Tottenham. Now the last team we'll look at in contention for this top four finish is Tottenham. So in goal, we have Lloris, followed up by Davies, Dyer, and Romero as the three central defenders with Reguilón, Højbjerg, Bentancur, and Dowd. Then in the front three, Son, Kane, and Kulusevski. No surprises there. Now looking at their build-up structure. Now they have the most probably versatile build-up structure with the ability of Dyer to then come as a holding midfielder in certain situations, typically when they aren't being high pressed. Now we also have him coming in on the left or the right, fanning out, creating asymmetry with their three central defenders and overloading one side, allowing them to have more passing connections on one side and a more vacant, weak side in their build-up, giving them two different dynamics to then affect the opponent. So now we can then see the structure with our three central defenders creating asymmetry, and then like we said, dual width on one side with a more vacant right side in this situation, with their fullback able to then exploit mid-range passes with the ability of Kane to drop into the midfield and have Son and Kulusevski run beyond him. So then now when we move into the midfield third, we go with our base structure of a 3-2 build-up with our three central defenders and a double pivot. This has been a staple for them as a starting position, and they have a lot of versatility to change the shape and change their structure to try and progress the ball. The first of which is Højbjerg dropping deeper to then join as a third central defender in the left half space. Davies then goes into the wide area, creating dual width while still maintaining his staggering to then free up Reguilón to go higher up the field and create more passing opportunities around the opposing team's block. Then we have a 3-1 build-up in the midfield third and in the middle three corridors. So then this frees up Bentancur to have more space on his own to potentially get on the ball and progress the attack. And we've seen both Højbjerg and Bentancur do this situation where they drop between central defenders, and as we see, Højbjerg has become more of a box-to-box midfielder, just slightly more so since Antonio Conte has taken over Spurs. So now as we move forward and talk about what Spurs do with their front three, we often see Kane dropping in deeper as he does, and Son's ability to run in behind him. So this can then come on either side, or it can create many different opportunities with the ability of Kane to drop between the lines and create space beyond the defense, and especially in the midfield third where the central defenders are active in following him and there is space to be created. It's very dangerous to have a player like Kane and playing against him. And then in the final third, we all know that he's very dangerous and good in his movement around the box, which then could be crucial for Spurs. So Spurs is a little bit of a mix between Manchester United and Arsenal, in my opinion. They're not as inconsistent as Manchester United, and they do have proven professionals like Kane and Son who are reliable and can win games for you. Now, they haven't been as consistent this season and haven't worked with Conte as much as Mikel Arteta has worked for Arsenal, which still for me puts Arsenal as favorites. They have the most points and they're very consistent in good form, looking to finish off the season. But the experience of Tottenham puts them as a close second, and then Manchester United have to be the least favorites for me. But let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.